Welcome back to Queens of the Damned, a horror podcast. Today we're discussing a topic you may not have considered. Way beyond Sweeney Todd, from Shakespeare to adaptations of some beloved books and movies, we bring you a discussion of a few of our favorite horror plays. Enjoy. So I chose Titus Andronicus. It is considered to be Shakespeare's first tragedy, and it's one that has kind of a weird and controversial history. Because it's so over-the-top violent, people don't seem to know what to make of it. And I think that's still true today. It's a lot more popular now, but it was really popular when it was first staged in the 1500s. Of course, they loved their violence, right? They thought that was hilarious. But especially in the Victorian era, right, it fell into obscurity because they thought it was obscene. Mm-hmm. And then its popularity kind of picked up again in the 50s and 60s. So have either of you read this play?
I have
known anything about it?
Yes.
So yes, have you seen it staged, Rachel?
No, I read it in college, and then I have seen the movie with Anthony Hopkins.
Okay, the Julie Taymor one.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so you have a good sense of it. I'm gonna give what is nowhere near a complete plot summary.
I don't know how you could.
But gives you the major points. And so hold on with me here because there's a lot of people that are going to be coming in at once, but they're all important. So I'm not just telling you anything that's extraneous.
A Shakespeare play with a lot of characters? What? No way!
This is insane!
Yeah, I know you're shocked. It's not just a two-man show. So Titus is a Roman general who has returned from a war with the Goths. And he brings home with him prisoner the Goth queen Tamra, her 3 sons, one whose name I can't remember, but he's not important anyway because he dies right away, and then Chiron and Demetrius, and then Tamra's servant/lover, Aaron the Moor. And Titus has lost... I wrote 2 sons in the battle, but I'm sure it's 21.
I believe it is.
He's lost 21 sons in the battles. I think he has, 4 of them left. And one of the returning rituals is to sacrifice one of Tamara's sons and burn his intestines in the sacrificial fire. Mm-hmm. So they do that. And obviously Tamara doesn't take that very well. So after Titus refuses, there's a lot of political stuff going on in this play. I wouldn't say it's one of the major themes, but it's kind of important to the revenge plot that's about to happen. So after Titus refuses to rule the Roman Empire, he's offered it. Saturninus, who is Caesar's eldest son, is chosen, and he is an extremely prissy, self-important person. And he chooses Titus's daughter, Lavinia, for his bride. But she's already betrothed to Saturninus's brother, Bassianus. Willingly, she really wants to marry him. So one of Titus's living sons helps Lavinia escape with Bassianus. And Titus stabs his own son to death. And at first refuses to let him be buried in the family tomb. So obviously Titus is a dude with some anger issues. So Saturninus is like, whatever, if I can't have her, I'm just going to have Tamara, who is the queen of the Goths, to be his queen. So that's kind of a turnaround, right? She's prisoner of war, and now she's suddenly queen of the Roman Empire. And he sets her and her sons free. So at this point, Titus and his people are clearly allied against Tamara and the new emperor and Tamara's sons. Although kind of barely civil words are still being exchanged, but they all hate each other, obviously. So if you're not gathering already, one of the major themes here is, who's barbarous and who's civilized. The Romans think of themselves as civilized, but we're about to find out that no one is anywhere near civilized here. So Tamara is now in this position of unparalleled power, and she's able to manipulate Saturninus to her will, while working with her sons and her lover to destroy the Andronicus family. She calls them the Andronici, which I love. And her first aside is, I will find a day to massacre them all and raise their faction and their family, the cruel father and his traitorous sons, to whom I sued for my dear son's life, and make them know what 'tis to let a queen kneel in the streets and beg for grace in vain. There's some really cool monologues in this play. So at this point, Tamara's lover, Aaron the Moor, decides to get involved, and he is what makes this thing go completely over the top. What is most frightening about this is you get the sense that Aaron really doesn't care about anyone. He is completely sociopathic, and he's doing everything he's about to do under the guise of helping Tamara get revenge. But he's doing it because he thinks it's hilarious. So he convinces Chiron and Demetrius to get at Titus in the most hurtful way possible. And from here on, there's a trigger warning. I mean, this whole play is a trigger warning, but especially this scene. So when they're hunting the next day together, Chiron and Demetrius take Lavinia, Titus's daughter, into the woods. They kill her husband, they rape her, they cut off her hands, they cut out her tongue so she can't write or speak who has perpetrated the crime, and they basically leave her there and taunt her, telling her to go home, call for sweet water, wash thy hands. And when Lavinia's uncle finally finds her, she opens her mouth to scream, and blood just comes ballooning out of it. They did this in the Tamor movie, so that's like one of those scenes, really iconic scenes. But Aaron's going for extra credit here. So he and Tamara convinced Saturninus that it was two more of Titus's sons who killed Bassianus, so they take him into custody, they take them into custody. So Titus is pretty much crying in the street at this point, and he's begging the tribunes to grant his sons mercy when he sees Lavinia approach with her uncle, with her hands cut out, her tongue cut off, all that stuff. And he introduces her by saying, "This was thy daughter." After all this carrying on, Aaron comes in, and he's like, "Hey, I just heard that if you, like, chop off one of your hands and send it to the emperor, he'll let your sons go free." So Titus is like, "Okay." And Aaron helps him chop off his own hand. And Saturninus replies by sending Titus his sons' heads, and he sends the hand back. I mean, that's nice, I guess. So Titus begins to dream of revenge, obviously. He doesn't exactly know how, though, or who is his enemy. Although I think it's pretty obvious. I don't know why he hasn't put two and two together. But anyway,
nobody ever puts two and two together in a Shakespearean
mean, come on, like,
play.
who have you wronged recently? It's perhaps that he has wronged so many people recently. He has no idea who it could be.
Yeah.
Who's angry at him. So Lavinia shows him a copy of Ovid's Metamorphosis, which contains the story of Philomel, who was raped in the woods. And they're able to supply her with a staff where she can write in the names of Chiron and Demetrius. So Aaron eventually gets caught. He's fully and joyously confesses to being behind everything. And when Lucius asks if he's sorry for having done any of it, Aaron gives this monologue. And he's standing on the scaffold ready to be hanged. So I'm gonna read it. It's not very long, but it's just like one of the best things in the whole play. So Lucius asks him if he is sorry for having done any of the deeds. And he says, "Even now I curse the day wherein I did not some notorious ill, as kill a man, or else devise his death, ravish a maid, or plot the way to do it, accuse some innocent and forswear myself, set deadly enmity between two friends, make poor men's cattle break their necks, set fire on barns and haystacks in the night, and bid the owners quench them with their tears. Oft have I digged up dead men from their graves and set them upright at their dear friend's door, even when their sorrows almost was forgot. And on their skins, as on the bark of trees, have with my knife carved in Roman letters, 'Let not your sorrow die, though I am dead.' But I have done 1,000 dreadful things as willingly as one would kill a fly, and nothing grieves me heartily indeed, but that I cannot do 10,000 more." So They decide he's too good for... they decide hanging is too good for him at this point. And they take him down, and they bury him in the dirt up to his neck and let him starve to death. I mean, that's fitting. It takes a lot longer.
That sounds like something that came out of the Inferno.
This play, I think, is pieced together from all the worst atrocities of literature and stuff before it happened. So, finally, Titus tricks Chiron and Demetrius to come with him. He slits their throats while Lavinia collects the blood, which is an awesome moment. It can be an awesome moment. And shortly after this, Titus hosts a dinner, and he invites Tamara and Saturninus. So in front of them, he kills Lavinia, basically to put her out of her misery. And then he reveals that he knows Chiron and Demetrius raped her, and tells Tamara that they're in fact baked into the meat pie that they're eating at this moment. And then, like, the play ends by everyone killing each other. It's a Shakespearean tragedy, right?
Yeah.
It's just, like, on speed. So...
Right.
As I said before, throughout history, no one seems to know how to deal with Titus. Here are just some things that famous people said about Titus Andronicus. T.S. Eliot said that it is one of the stupidest and most uninspired plays ever written, a play in which it is incredible that Shakespeare had any hand at all. The famous critic Harold Bloom, and this is right from Wikipedia because I love the way it was written, said that the audience laughed several times in scenes which were supposed to be tragic, and that this is evidence for the play's failure as a tragedy. He was particularly critical of the line in which Lavinia is told to carry Titus' severed hand in her mouth. True story. Arguing that no play which contains such a scene could possibly be serious. He thus concluded that the best director to tackle the play would be Mel Brooks.
You know, I would love to see Mel Brooks' version of Titus Andronicus.
I would eat this up.
I would absolutely be there, like, opening day, ready to go.
I would too. But this is the weird thing about this play. Other people, like the other side of the coin, and I know quite a few people who would say so, think that this is a genuinely good play, although it's very tricky to stage. The scholar Jan Kott said she had, and this is a quote from her, had seen it on the stage and found it a moving experience. In watching Titus, we come to understand, perhaps more than by looking at any other Shakespeare play, the nature of his genius. He gave an inner awareness to passions. Cruelty ceased to be merely physical. Shakespeare discovered the moral hell. He discovered heaven as well, but he remained on earth. And it's a play that can become as serious or as kitschy B-horror as you want it to be. And you can just see that based on its history of adaptations. I know there's a B-horror version of it. There's the Julie Taymor, which is very serious and makes a point about modern violence. So it kind of is chameleon-like, depending on what you want to do with it. But it's horrific and beautiful and funny, and it's, I think, my favorite Shakespeare play besides Midsummer Night's Dream. So,
really?
Yes.
See, and I found it when I read it. I agree with you that it... Oh, my headphone is falling out, sorry. I agree with you that it has some really great monologues, but overall, not for me. I mean, I see what he was trying to do with some of the... Obviously, it's better than, like, anything I could ever do, and better than things that, like, most people could ever write. But when compared to his other works, I feel like the other ones had more of a point to make. This one, I feel like the point... I can see what he was trying to do, but it gets muddled. Which, you know, I remember my professor saying that's why a lot of historians really believe that this was one of his earlier plays, because it's not, the writing is not as sharp and the plotting is not as sharp as some of his later works. And I would say this is one of the rare cases where I love the Julie Taymor movie, because I think by making a commentary on modern violence, she's able to find a point that Shakespeare almost couldn't find. Like, she's able to bring that sort of relevance to it instead of just being like a lot of violent shit happens.
Yes.
And that's kind of the point.
I think you hit that on the head. I was about to say that this is a play you shouldn't read. You need to see it staged. Because someone who can see the point in it will take it, and you can do so many different things with it. And you can cut ridiculous moments like Titus telling Lavinia to carry his hand in her mouth. Obviously, Shakespeare had the point of, he was trying to make a sensationalist play that everyone would love, and it did kind of work getting his name on the board because, you know, it was so out there. But now it kind of has to be taken and done something with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I know in the movie they keep that part where she carries the hand in her mouth.
They do.
Because I remember
and
it.
it's ridiculous and awful and funny. But
it is. And like the scene where they're having the dinner and he's dressed in like the Chef Boyardee outfit.
Yes, I forgot
and
about
he's like swanning around the dining room serving these meat pies. It's done in a humorous way, but it's humor in like a really sick way. Like, it's not fun. Like, you're laughing because it's funny, but then it's also like, this is really not funny.
Yes.
Like, this is really fucked up, but you can't help but laugh because it's funny.
That was exactly the way we attempted to stage it. And I think it went over really well with audiences. I mean, we just had to feel out those beats of humor. And there were nights when people laughed at things we weren't expecting them to laugh at. But, you know, it's one of those things we've talked about before where if something horrific is happening in front of you, you might not know how to handle it, and so you might laugh. So, and, you know, I remember we served the audience the meat pies. We had, you know, it was very involved. Like... So we made everybody eat it. And they're like, do you have a vegetarian option? Literally, people say, you have vegetarian? No, it's not vegetarian. Just...
Right.
So, I mean, there was definitely humor in it.
Is this gluten-free?
I just finally went, it's people. God. And then I was like...
It's people, guys. Oh my God. That is so funny.
So...
But yeah, I agree with you. I think it can be really well done, but just to read it, it's not a pleasant read.
And it's not easy. It's not easy to stage either. It's so hard.
I could see where it would be hard. Because that's the thing I remember from reading it. Because of course, like, maybe you guys don't do this, but I feel like most people probably do. But when I'm reading a play, I sort of picture in my mind, like, what it would look like if they were on stage acting it out. Right? And I remember with Titus being like,
what?
I don't know how we could possibly stage this shit. Like, it's so, like, it's like, okay, you know, the part in, have you guys seen The Addams Family from the 90s?
Yes.
Right?
I don't think I've
seen
it. No.
Oh my God. Okay, so you know the scene where they're at the school talent show and Pugsley and Wednesday are doing the monologue from whatever play, and they're like pretending to slit each other's throats and the blood is spraying all over the audience. When you read Titus, that's what I picture.
So
just like blood spraying.
Like, you're not wrong. But you can control that. There was one really, really famous staging of it where they used red ribbons instead of blood. So it was like one of those.
Right. I think I've seen pictures.
But we used blood, and we used blood bags, and my mom got hit once. So when she came, my friend who was playing the son who Titus killed in the beginning grabbed his throat and spun around, and the blood just went and like we overfilled this blood bag. So
okay.
And then after that, the director was like, "We need a strawberry, not an apricot, please." Too much, but yeah, it was super. It was The blood worked though; it wasn't fake. Like, it wasn't fakey.
Oh yeah, no. I could see that, but that's just what I always pictured reading it. Was when she like turns to the audience and the blood is just spurting out of her neck. That's just what I pictured, like this really dramatic.
Oh yeah,
ridiculous, over
like
the
arterial
top.
kind of.
Right. But, like, not in a cool way, like yours probably was, but just in, like, a ridiculous, over-the-top way. But then, like you said, I mean, when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah.
Like, it had a lot of cool visuals, like the visual of Lavinia with the branches in her hands.
Yeah, they had...
After they cut her hands off, the branches in her stumps.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful image. I mean, I really love that movie.
It is. And the actress who's playing... I mean, we need to move on anyway. But the actress who's playing Lavinia, she was actually going through cocaine withdrawal when she was playing the part. And so that really helped with the, like, neurosis.
Right.
She was, like, visibly just pale and sweating and, yeah. So it really, really... That paid off in a really terrible way. But
yeah.
All right, so my notes are nowhere near as involved, mostly because I feel like Nikki's play is, like, super insanely involved, and then I just went the complete other end of the spectrum, where there's literally 4 characters in one room. So I chose No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre, which is one of my favorite texts I've read in general. I really love existentialism, and this is one of the first existentialist texts I read. So this was first performed in 1944, but it was performed at the Biltmore in 46, and Stark Young said it should not be seen. It should be seen whether you like it or not. So it was received, like, extremely well.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, that is really good.
It was received very well when it came out. Sartre was a French author, playwright, and a philosopher, and like I said, he was mostly known for his existentialist texts. So, in the beginning of the play, we start out with a character named Garçon, who is escorted into a room by a valet at what sounds to basically be a hotel. And he's asking all of these questions, including where his toothbrush is and what time it was. And it's kind of clear from the beginning that he's dead, and which makes, you know, like, some of his questions are funny, just simply because, like, you're asking where your toothbrush is, like, you're literally dead. But he looks around the room. There's no windows in the room. There's no mirrors. There's no light switches, and he realizes, like, he can't sleep. It isn't really mentioned, like, why or how he figures out that he can't sleep, but he's just like, okay, well, so I can't sleep, so I'm, like, never free, basically, from existence. Like, I'm always aware of everything. And the valet says, you know, like, sometimes the lights will go out, but, like, you're not responsible for that. So he has no control over anything. And he is eventually joined by both Inez and Estelle. And the 3 of them are in hell, basically. And they spend the first half of the play trying to figure out why they're even there, and how just the fact that they are in hell and it feels like they're just sitting in a hotel room with no windows. They're appalled at the idea. They all came in expecting to basically be tortured. They're expecting fire and brimstone and to be tortured by demons for eternity and everything, and they walk into a hotel room and they're all really confused. And at first, none of them want to admit to their crimes. They're all kind of like, no, like, I wasn't a good person, but I also didn't do anything worth me coming to hell. But of course, after a while, we learn, wow, that's not true. So we find out Garçon cheated on his wife with a mistress, basically in front of her, sleeping with her in his and his wife's bed while his wife, like, served them breakfast. And he also ran. He was supposed to be in the war, but when the war started, he ran to Mexico, because he wanted to do, like, a pacifist magazine, and they killed him for it. Or a pacifist newspaper or something. So he pretty much opposed the war, and he was killed for it. And then Estelle got pregnant, and she did not want to have her baby, but the guy that she was with wanted to have the baby. So she had the kid, and then shortly after she had the kid, drowned it in a lake. And then the guy killed himself. Wonder why. And then it's not really entirely clear. Inez is a lesbian, so I don't know if that's why she's in hell. But she's just considered like an all-around really terrible person. Like, she just causes conflict, and she's really open about the fact that she's just really hateful and mean, and she does bad things all the time. And she turns her lover's husband against her, basically, and I think he kills himself because of that.
Okay. I couldn't remember if he killed himself or if he was murdered.
I want to say he killed himself. So it's basically just a mess of these people trying to, one, come to terms with the fact that they're dead and that they're in hell, and all of them can see the real world basically below them, and it kind of fades out once people start talking, or once people stop talking about them, and then they can't see anything anymore. And so you've got all these people who are trying to come to terms with the fact that they are not only dead physically in the real world, but their memory has been wiped out as well. Like, no one even cares about them anymore. And not only that, these people are going through all these existentialist problems, but then they're also, none of them get along, and that is how they realize, okay, yeah, this really is hell. So Estelle tries to woo Garçon, who basically spends all of his time really concerned about the fact that no one on Earth was thinking about him anymore. But Estelle is like trying super hard to woo him and to get him onto her side. But Inez wants to be with Estelle, but because Estelle doesn't like women, she doesn't want anything to do with Inez. This is like also complicated. They basically, none of them get along with each other in every way, but I'm going to try to explain it.
I thought you said this wasn't involved. Yours is involved.
It's not involved. It's just
very involved.
Whatever.
People's relationships with each other are fucked up.
Yes.
It's the same all around.
Yes.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so Estelle pretty much only wants to be with Garçon because she wants the attention, because she admits that, like, no, she doesn't, like, that she does think that Garçon is a coward, and he's offended by that. Now he's like, okay, I don't want anything to do with you now because you think I'm a coward. And so Estelle is upset because Garçon doesn't want her. And, Okay, so finally, Garçon is like, I'm done fighting with you people, and he's like, I'm leaving. And he gets up, and everyone's like, the door is not gonna open. And he's like, slamming on the door, and then all of a sudden it actually opens, and he just kind of stands there, and they're like, what are you doing? Aren't you gonna leave? And he's like, I don't think I can leave. And they're all like, okay, well, somebody needs to leave. And nobody is willing to leave. And Garçon is basically like, looks at Inez and is like, if I can get you to believe that I'm not a coward, then I will have done something. So this guy doesn't leave because he is so obsessed with, like, basically pleasing people. Yeah, like, that he's like, nope, I'm gonna stay in this room that I thought I was locked in for the rest of eternity, even though the door's open. I'm gonna stay here and try to convince this woman, who is a very hateful and mean woman, that I'm not a coward. So no one leaves. And basically, like, after they're, like, just fighting with each other constantly, he pretty much just said, yeah, like, this is hell, and hell is other people. And that's kind of it. And that's where the phrase hell is other people comes from, is from this play. And I can't really do it justice, because I didn't have enough time, I feel like, to actually, because I didn't think about doing this until the last minute. But there's so much going on in this play, and if this were like an existentialist podcast, I'd probably be going ham, because I love this play so much. It's just so good. But I mean, it's really just like this situation of all of these people who are not, they're pretty much faced with themselves in others' perceptions. Like, you can't escape what other people think of you. You can't like nothing. Yeah, and that is hell basically. But yeah, I don't feel like I have good enough notes to explain this play well enough, but
I haven't read or
you
seen
got the
it.
major points.
What'd you say,
I
Nikki?
haven't read or seen
I've
it, but
read
I
it.
would love to see this staged now.
Yeah, I haven't seen it staged. I would love to.
Yeah, I've only read it. I've never seen it staged either. I know there's like out there, probably it's on YouTube, a BBC version with Alec Guinness in the lead. Yeah. But yeah, I love this play. I was really excited when you picked it. I'm not like massively into existentialism, but I do love this play.
It's a good one. It's a really good one. There's a lot of really good lines in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And all the characters are interesting, I think. Yeah, I like it. And it's always made me laugh, you know, because everyone knows the phrase hell is other people. But, like, so many people don't understand what it meant in the context of the play. Like, they think it just means, like, being around other people sucks balls. But, like you said, it's really this idea that we can never escape being worried about the way that we look to other people.
Yep.
Right.
And that's why he can't go through the door, because he realizes that he still looks bad to Inez. And so he can't go through with it because he's still having doubt about whether he is a coward or not, because someone else thinks he is.
So hell is being visible to other people, and hell is
basically caring about what other people think about you, which as a human being you cannot escape.
Yeah.
As much as people like to say, I don't give a shit, I don't care if anybody
cares.
likes me, you know, deep down.
Well, there's this really...
And it's also...
Go ahead,
sorry.
Nikki. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's also something we create as a group, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hell is other people. Hell is us in a social context. Like, we make things hard for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, there's this really great moment where, like, Estelle is really obsessed with her appearance, right? Like, she's trying to, like, put her makeup on and fix her face and everything. And she can't, there's no mirrors in there, which is part of her punishment, clearly. And Inez says, come here, I will be your mirror. And Estelle, like, looks into her eyes and can see her reflection in Inez's eyes and everything. And it's a really good moment, I think, in the play. Yeah, and then Inez is also at the same time...
Has a film been made?
What?
Has a film been made of this? Like, besides the BBC recording?
I don't think so.
I think there was. I want to say that there was. And that it was not very good.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say that it was not, or maybe it was just like mixed reviews, but I've never seen it. I've only read the play, but I would like to watch the BBC version.
They'd have to pack a lot of stuff into a movie, because it's a short play.
Yes.
Like, I literally read it in less than an hour.
And it all takes place in one room, and, like, you can effectively do that. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie 12 Angry Men.
Haven't seen the film, but I know what it is.
Okay, the whole movie takes place in the jury room. The whole movie. But the way that the director works with the fact that this is a really claustrophobic space, and the shadow and the light and the heat and, you know, the sound and everything really makes it effective and makes you feel like you're trapped in this room with them. So I think it would take a really skilled director like that to make this play into an effective movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like there'd be a lot of text that would have to be added too, though. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know if it was one of those, like, I don't know anything about filmmaking, but if it was one of those like, art house films where they linger a lot on the shots, and, you know, I could see that where the dialogue is all the same, but there's a lot of visual stuff going on to fill up the space.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to say, I mean, I don't know how long the play is, but I can't imagine that it's less than 90 minutes to stage it.
I have no
Right.
idea.
And that would be...
I don't know if I've ever seen a play that was under 90 minutes. So that would be an okay, for an art house movie. That's a good length. I don't think most movies need to be over, 90 minutes. But, they just keep going.
Man, when I got to that movie last night, I thought it was going to be 2 hours. No, it was 3.
Oh, all of these movies are fucking long.
Why are movies 3 or 4 hours these days? What happened?
All movies are long now.
God.
All movies are very long now. I know, and they don't all need to be that
I know.
long.
I stopped watching the Marvel movies when we were at Age of Ultron, and I found myself tapping my foot at about 2.5 hours in, and it was still about 3.5 hours long. And I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. I'm done.
But here's the thing. I agree, because Age of Ultron was not great, but the last two Avengers movies were both 3 hours, and they did not feel like 3 hours. I mean, it flew by. Yeah. I was like, I have not been in this theater for 3 hours when the credits started rolling.
I agree with that.
No, I was like, shit, this is pointless.
Yeah, no, Age of Ultron is not my favorite. I think I stopped watching Avengers movies after that one, because I was like,
Same.
I'm done.
No, I mean, I still saw him.
I didn't see him again until Tyler and I started dating, and now I'm into him, so that's great.
Well, you can be into them on your own time.
I am, but I'm saying, I started out not being into them, but now apparently I have to be into them, so it's just...
That's cool, they're good movies.
They are.
They're good movies. Okay, so I chose a musical that is... First of all, I love musicals. I should preface it by saying that. Any excuse to talk about a musical is a good excuse. So, I chose a musical. It's very near and dear to my heart. I chose Carrie the Musical, which is one of the most notorious, probably the most notorious Broadway flop. I discovered this musical in 2005. I was in my freshman year in college at Illinois State, and I was horribly, horribly, horribly depressed and never left my dorm room. And the only thing that got me through the semester was musicals. And so I was on, this is gonna date me, I was on a message board and some people were talking about Carrie the Musical. So I was on AOL Instant Messenger, another dated thing, with a friend of mine from the message board, and I was like, I would love to hear this, because there's no cast recording, there's no official recording of it, but there are a ton of bootleg recordings. And she said, well, I have a friend who has a bunch of bootlegs of it, and, here's his screen name, I'll tell him you're going to message him. And that person was my best friend, Garrett, and that's how we met. And we've been best friends for almost 15 years, all because of this really amazingly shitty, wonderful musical. So, that's my little backstory for why I picked it and why I love it so much. Okay, so, Carrie the Musical was conceived of by Lawrence Cohen, who wrote the screenplay for the film version of Carrie. And then he also wrote the book of the musical, which for people who don't know much about musicals, the book is the dialogue, right? The spoken dialogue. So it was conceived of by him and composer Michael Gore, who had composed the songs in Fame, the musical, which I feel like a lot of people have seen the movie Fame. And they saw a performance of this opera called Lulu. And for some reason, this opera reminded them of Carrie. I don't really know why. They're, not similar. I was reading the plot of Lulu, and, I don't get it, but why not? It was fate. And so they thought this was, a great idea. They're like, what if somebody made a musical of Carrie? Right? Why anyone would watch the movie Carrie, read the book, and think this needs songs, I don't know. But they did. This needs songs and really intricate choreography. So Michael Gore, the composer, ends up bringing in his Fame co-writer, Dean Pitchford, who writes the lyrics, and the three get to it. So in 1984, they have the first workshop. And this was only Act 1 of the musical. Most songs end up being cut before the final production. But after the workshop, the producers are so confident that they announced that the musical would open on Broadway in 1986, which absolutely does not happen. So in 1987, the producers finally raised the funds to stage a version in Stratford-upon-Avon at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And Royal Shakespeare Company obviously does a lot more than Shakespeare. That's where, like, Les Mis was first staged. They do a lot of musicals there. Yeah. Anyway, so the show starred Lindsay Haitley as Carrie, and this was her stage debut. Barbara Cook as Margaret White. Anyone who knows anything really about musicals, Barbara Cook is kind of a legend. It was choreographed by Debbie Allen, who, again, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Debbie Allen.
Probably not, no.
Okay, she's a very legendary choreographer. I mean, she did the choreography for Fame. She is Felicia Rashad's sister. She's really legendary, but kind of a nut. And, she's kind of, like, famously, like, a nut. And it was directed by Terry Hands, and this was his first musical, which is probably not a good sign. So, behind the scenes, there were constant arguments between the director, the writers, Debbie Allen, and the more experienced cast members, all of whom really did want to mount the best show possible, right? I really believe that they were all going in with pure intentions to make this better. The problem was they all had different visions for what the show should be. So they were constantly fighting with each other. So because this show was so complex and because it was constantly changing, the cast had to go through rigorous rehearsals, which averaged 8 hours before every performance, even though Actors Equity states that once, like, because that's the union, that's the Stage Actors Union, their rules state that once a production is previewed, the cast is only allowed to rehearse 8 to 12 hours a week. So they were working these people to death, basically. The production ran into problems almost immediately. So basically the most famous scene is, of course, at the prom, when Carrie has the pig's blood dumped on her, right? And unfortunately they discovered that they really couldn't do it on stage. They could not dump corn syrup all over the stage because obviously the actors were then going to be required to, quote unquote, run for their lives when the prom destruction starts, and they would all, like, slip and break their necks.
That didn't stop us during Titus. I guess the huge blood was all at the end.
Also this was, you know, like 30 some years ago, so, you know, things have changed. But also they discovered that if they drenched Lindsay Haitley in blood, her microphone would short out.
Okay.
So no one would be able to hear her sing. So they came up with a compromise, which was ultimately Chris and Billy ran on stage and dumped a small cup of blood on her head.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Yes. I'm not kidding. There is a video of this. There is a video of this production that I own that is, they dump a thing of blood on her head. And so the staging of this musical was completely surreal. I mean, there's, like, mirrors and smoke and, like, everything's white and very minimal everywhere. And they cut most of the actual dialogue. It was almost completely sung through. And the emphasis on Carrie's powers is so little that, like, anyone who hadn't seen the movie or read the book had no idea what the fuck is going on. Right? So the musical finally opens at the RSC, and on opening night, Barbara Cook, who played the mother, was nearly decapitated by an elaborate set piece during her opening number, Open Your Heart, and she promptly quit the musical, though she did agree to stay on for the remainder of the Stratford run because a replacement couldn't be found. And the run actually ended up being less than a month. Choreography, song structure, and dialogue were changed daily, so the show was never performed exactly the same way twice. Early performances featured songs that were quickly dropped, including Her Mother Should Have Told Her and White Star, and several that were drastically rewritten, including Heaven and Crackerjack, which became Out for Blood, which is the most balls-to-the-wall insane number that I will explain in a little bit. So the initial audiences in London roared with laughter throughout the play. So instead of embracing this reaction and just accepting that this musical is being viewed as like pure camp, Terry Hands, the director, cut every single line that got a laugh.
Oh my god.
What?
Yes. So despite the bad press, ticket sales actually weren't bad. The show ends up opening a little less than 2 months later on Broadway, with little advance promotion or ticket sales. They did like some minor tweaking to the show, but otherwise it's pretty identical, taking into account the never-ending rewrites. And the cast was the same, except for Barbara Cook, who obviously, after being decapitated, really left the show this time. And she was replaced by Betty Buckley, who's amazing, and is amazing in this show, I have to say. So the audience who saw the initial preview on April 28th, 1988, including Stephen King, weren't sure what to make of it. And I want to read a passage from this really amazing book that anyone who's interested in theater should read, and where I got almost all of my information. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It's called Not Since Carrie, 40 Years of Broadway Musical Flops by Ken Mandelbaum. And I don't know if you guys can see the cover. Obviously, people listening won't be able to see it. But there she is. I don't know if it's blurry.
It's not focusing.
Oh my god.
There she is. She looks so happy.
There she is.
She's so
drenched
happy.
in blood. We will post a picture of this with the episode on the blog, so everyone can see. I have quite a few production photos from Carrie that we can put up. Okay. Word is out among New York's flop connoisseurs. Don't miss the first preview of Carrie. During its tryout in Stratford, England, Broadway diva Barbara Cook jumped ship, and some who made the trip to Stratford reported back that Carrie was crazy. Carrie postponed its New York previews more than once, and for a while it looked as if Carrie might never begin performances here at all. Finally, Carrie set a date to begin, April 28, 1988. To those who care about collecting flops, attending the performance is de rigueur. Some present are saying that this could be the only performance of Carrie in New York, and such gossip gains credence when the opening of the house is delayed for half an hour. Which obviously Nikki, who has done theater, just rolled her eyes. That is not a good sign. If on the first preview you are already not able to start on time. Another ominous note sounds in the Virginia Theater on West 52nd Street. The entire auditorium has been painted black. Why? We don't know. We are plunged into darkness, and the lights come up on a white enameled box with side panels capable, we discover, of rotating into mirrors. In toga-like white exercise outfits, a dozen ladies, most looking too old and hard for the high school girls they are meant to be, are engaging in strenuous aerobics under the guidance of gym teacher, Miss Gardner, who is clad in a Greek-style lounge outfit. The scene, in which the girls sing the intense Inn, a song about the pressures of adolescence, does not begin to resemble any high school on earth. Clearly, something is wrong. A row of translucent revolving panels representing showers is hydraulically borne aloft, the girls rising into the air as they sing out their romantic fantasies and dream on. The stage is filled with smoke, although there is no water, and these girls take showers in bras and panties. Carrie White, her plump body covered by a towel, discovers that she is bleeding, and the girls taunt her for her ignorance of menstruation. A light bulb mysteriously explodes overhead. Why? We have no idea. Left alone, Carrie performs the title number, one of the most overwrought and lengthy solos ever in a Broadway musical, in which she expresses her isolation and longing for acceptance. The scene shifts to the White home, which for some reason appears to consist solely of a floor, a trapdoor, and one chair. Carrie's mother, Margaret, is discovered prostrate on the floor. Margaret is a religious fanatic, yet her fashionable all-black ensemble includes stylish high-heeled boots. She sings an eerily beautiful hymn. She sings an eerily beautiful hymn, "Open Your Heart," in which she is soon joined by her daughter. When Mrs. White learns what transpired in the shower room, she interprets the incident as evidence of Carrie's sin, and begins stalking Carrie all over the stage as the two perform a grandly operatic duet, and Eve was weak. Suddenly, something wonderful happens in the show. There's searing writing and a tremendous performance by Buckley and Haitley. Margaret forces Carrie down the trapdoor, the sparks fly up, and Buckley finishes solo to a wall of bravos. Now, an assemblage of automobile fronts and headlights moves on. Coupling high school kids sing "Don't Waste the Moon." Good girl Sue expresses her regrets about mocking Carrie, while bad girl Chris sings of her hatred for Carrie. Doubts about director Terry Hands' control of the evening's tone becomes exacerbated. It's so far, what is Carrie? Half of it is thuggish camp, half of it is gorgeous musical theater. The evening goes off the track completely in the next scene, set on a bare stage, referred to in the program as Night Spot, supposedly a typical gathering place for middle American high school students. But the kids in studded leather are moving in a kind of early middle neurotic disco. Apparently they date not at the local soda shop, but in a backroom bar. Chris, bad girl in a red bodysuit, plots revenge on Carrie with help from hip and mean boyfriend Billy. Good girl Sue, in a pink bodysuit, persuades sweet and nice boyfriend Tommy to take Carrie to the prom. By now, anyone unfamiliar with the Stephen King novel on which the musical was based, or the subsequent film version, wouldn't have the slightest idea what's going on, who the characters are, or even where the show is taking place.
Oy.
Carrie informs her mother that she's been invited to the prom, but when mother forbids daughter to go, the show becomes unhinged yet again. The stage floor opens, and Carrie, hands aflame, yes, her hands really appear to be on fire, stands in front of a large strip of simulated fire, behind which her mother is pinned. Stephen King buffs know, of course, that Carrie has the power of telekinesis. But as these powers have barely been hinted at until now, the rest of the audience is bewildered. Why are Carrie's hands on fire, and what is actually happening in this musical? Act 2 opens on, this is the song I was talking about, that I really want to read about. Act 2 opens on, according to the program, the pig farm. It is with this scene that Carrie stakes its claim to a special niche in musical theater history. Billy literally slaughters pigs for Chris. We hear oinks through the sound system to obtain the blood that they will need to humiliate Carrie. In the number, called Out for Blood, boys in leather perform dangerous choreography around and over the fire strip, which doubles here as a pig trough, chanting the refrain, "Kill the pig, kill the pig, 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 pig." Chris sings, "It's a simple little gig, you help me kill a pig." And Billy, topless and with his hair in braids, smears his chest repeatedly with the blood of the squealing pigs. When the number ends, a few applaud dutifully, but most look at the stage or at each other with mouths open, just like the audience at Springtime for Hitler, the show within the movie The Producers. So then there's a little bit more. So now they're at the prom. Chris's big moment of revenge is so poorly staged it gets laughs. Billy runs on and plunks a small bucket of raspberry topping over Carrie's head. instead of the elaborately rigged device of the Carrie novel and film. Next, in the destruction, Carrie, hydraulically lifted on a white platform, extends her arm, and laser beams shoot out over the audience. What looks like a plastic... Yes. There's a video of this. What looks like a plastic shower curtain traps the revelers, and they feign death throes. A roof descends, with a hole cut so that Haley, still aloft, is not decapitated. And when the lights come up, the roof has become an enormous white staircase, covering the entire stage and disappearing up into the flies. Where are we? In heaven? On the high school steps? At Jacob's ladder? Jacob's pillow? Mrs. White, in a cocktail dress, descends the steps, singing the title song as a lullaby. Still singing, she takes out a knife and stabs Carrie. Carrie touches her mother lightly, and her mother instantly falls dead. Carrie descends the stairs, crawling backward. She smears blood all over the white steps, drawing barely suppressed laughter from the audience. Carrie joins Sue downstage. Sue comforts the dying Carrie. Mrs. White lies dead on the platform, and as the lights dim to black, boos ring out from the upper balcony, while below, others begin an ovation. Carrie has become an instant legend. So I just had to get that description from that book, because there is no other way to talk about this musical without watching the video of it, which obviously, because we're a podcast, we can't show. It used to be on YouTube. If I can find a YouTube link, I will post it on our Facebook page. It's insane. It's insane. But amazing.
Maybe we can put snippets of
the songs. I have a recording of it.
Oh my god.
I have a bootleg recording of it that I listen to regularly. I know all the words.
So, like, when you say, like, she's singing this, then we can maybe say, like, a few seconds of...
Exactly. Because I will tell you, the song that he was talking about where it becomes actually a great musical, and Eve Was Weak, is an amazing song. That's the song where Carrie's mother is explaining to her the concept of original sin, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and God made Eve from Adam's rib, and Eve was weak. So after this first preview, the buzz in New York was overwhelming. I mean, people flocked to the theater to see this because, I mean, well, I wouldn't say like the general public, but I would say people like me who love Broadway, love musicals, love bad things, and especially love bad Broadway musicals. If I could invent a time machine and go back in time, this is what I would do. Would go see Carrie the musical in its original Broadway run. I would be beside myself. So the critics gave this musical brutal reviews, obviously. There are several bootlegs, actually, of it, which is surprising, considering the show ran for 2 weeks of previews and 5 actual performances before it closed.
Wow.
So that's really, really, really bad. So obviously this musical was considered extremely unsuccessful, but like the book says, it became an instant legend within the Broadway community. It continues to be an instant legend. This book, Not Since Carrie, was written in 1991. It really added to the mystique of the show. You know, it gave a lot of people like me, who don't live in New York, right, an idea of what this musical was like. And again, if you're someone like me who reads a description like that and thinks, I have to see this, you immediately start hunting down the bootlegs, which is what happened. So for a long time, Betty Buckley, who played Margaret, would not talk about this show. She would not, because she was just coming off having won a Tony for playing Grisabella in Cats. And this was her follow-up. It really couldn't have been worse. And So she wouldn't talk about it for a long time. Though now she will talk about it. Now I think it's been long enough.
She's been established. She can...
Well, and she can accept that, you know what, some people are always just gonna know me.
For that.
For this, right? But she did record a couple of songs on some CDs, and so did Lindsay Haley, who played Carrie. She recorded the title track on a solo CD of hers. So, over the years, there were a few unauthorized productions mounted. There were a couple at, like, theater camps, and a couple at, like, summer stock, I think, that were done. But the creators were so humiliated by this that they would never let another production be staged until 2012. So in 2012, there was this huge excitement within the Broadway community because they were finally going to let them stage Carrie again, right? And they did it off Broadway. And everybody was really excited. And then it started. And it was not Carrie that was staged on Broadway. It was heavily edited. And even worse, it was fucking boring.
Really? How do you make Carrie boring? That's a feat.
It went from a train wreck that you cannot look away from, that has flashes of brilliance, and even the parts that are bad are so fucking bananas that you just have to, like, stand up and cheer, right? So that is what people wanted to see. Right? People who wanted to see Carrie wanted to see Carrie. They did not want to see this. And so it really didn't do very well. I found it to be pretty boring. It wasn't the cast's fault. You know, they really did what they could. But the changes just made it suck.
Right.
So most recently, this musical has been back into the pop culture stratosphere because the creator of Riverdale is a super fan of Carrie.
Okay.
And in season 2, so 2 seasons ago of Riverdale, because I think they're just about to start season 4. So 2 seasons ago of Riverdale, they actually do an episode where the high school is staging a production of Carrie the Musical, and they sing several of the songs throughout the show. It is a musical episode. The episode is amazing. They released a cast recording of the cast singing the songs, and it's so good, and it really captures the spirit, I think, of Carrie the Musical. So that's it. I have no idea what Stephen King thinks about this. I literally could not find a single article with a quote from Stephen King talking about Carrie the Musical. I like to think that he likes to think maybe, you know, that was the time when he was on a lot of drugs. Maybe he thinks it was a drug-induced hallucination. And, you know, that's just how he's continued to go on living. I don't know. But it is one of the most balls-to-the-wall, bananas things you will ever see. I don't think there will ever be another musical like it. It just... God bless it. God bless it. It's amazing. You guys, you just don't understand how good this musical is. And not just because it's bad, but because some of it is really good. And so it just makes it even better. That, like, you can see where maybe in an alternate universe it could have been a good musical, but these guys were absolutely nowhere near talented enough to make it a good musical. Oh, it's just so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I would love to see it.
You know, I'm Googling Stephen King Carrie the Musical. I cannot find a quote from him. Weird.
He always has something to say.
It's so
that's
weird.
Weird to me.
You know, if I could meet him, I feel like this is the question that I would ask.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at QOTD Podcast, on Facebook at facebook.com/QOTD Podcast, Tumblr at queensofthedamnpodcast.tumblr.com, and YouTube at Queens of the Damn Podcast.
Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and TuneIn Radio. You can also follow us on our blog, queensofthedamnpodcast.wordpress.com, to find bonus content and extra information on our episodes.
If you would like to donate to our show, you can find us at patreon.com/QOTD podcast, where you can receive special perks as a listener for becoming a monthly patron. If you would like to make a one-time donation, you can send it to QOTDpodcast@gmail.com on PayPal. We'll see you next week.
I'm glad that no one picked Sweeney Todd.